Hi, everybody, back again. So this is really an honor. We're going to be joined now by policy. She may say something else, but her title, I believe, is Senior Advisor on Domestic Policy. And Stefanie, thank you for joining us. Do I have you up on the screen? Yeah,
I'm here.
thank you.
Hello.
So, and I say Stefanie, I say Steph. Could I say Steph?
Absolutely.
Thank you. So, and then just so people know, you started with the Biden folks like as like an intern or something. How long ago?
12, 13 years ago, I've been with President Biden, so more than a decade.
And you worked your way all the way up, and now is it senior advisor or what's your title?
Yes, I'm Deputy Assistant to the President and Senior Advisor to the Domestic Policy Advisor here at the White House. We have very long titles.
Okay.
But the important thing is I'm doing domestic policy with a focus on gun violence here.
And you focus on climate a little bit as well, I think, right? Is that right?
So, yeah.
And on the gun violence, so, the administration is leading the way in a lot of places on gun violence, which I know you're going to talk about. But a lot of that comes from people like you. I mean, and really you, because you're the one who's probably gathering what can be supported, what can actually work, what can get through Congress. A lot of that falls upon you. So we all know the president and the vice president, and when they come out and speak at a Ghost Guns event or something like that, we all listen to them, but the behind the scenes person is you. So that's why we're really thrilled to have you. So I'm hoping you will spend a few minutes telling us about what you work on and how that goes, and what we can look forward to in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Matthew, for the opportunity, and the entire 97% team. Going to what Matthew said, I think I always say that working for now President Biden, doing policy for President Biden, is one of the easiest policy jobs, because he is so clear in what he believes in, what he stands for, what his principles are. You don't have to do a lot of guessing. He really is resolute and firm in his beliefs, and that's especially true on gun violence prevention, where he has a decades-long career of fighting for bold, aggressive gun safety legislation and really driving progress on this issue. So it's a pleasure to do this work for him. As I said, I'm Deputy Assistant to the President and Senior Advisor to the Domestic Policy Advisor here at the White House. Under the leadership of Ambassador Susan Rice, I coordinate the White House's gun violence work. And because the solutions to gun violence are interdisciplinary, what we've done here is we've built a multifaceted team of experts in the Domestic Policy Council who together coordinate a whole of government approach to reducing gun violence and supporting communities affected by gun violence. I want to take a few minutes and explain how we are approaching this issue. The Biden administration is pursuing a comprehensive approach to addressing gun violence, and I really mean comprehensive in three ways. First, we're tackling all forms of gun violence, not only mass shootings, but also community violence, domestic violence with firearms, accidental shootings, and suicide by firearms, which I know you were just discussing in this conference. Second, we are pursuing a whole of government approach, mobilizing not only the Department of Justice, which you might assume would respond to gun violence, but also the Departments of Health and Human Services, Housing and Urban Development, Education, Defense, Veterans Affairs, and the Treasury, just to name a few. Third, President Biden is pulling all of the levers he has: executive action, budget, and bully pulpit to advance legislation on the Hill and at the state level. I'm proud to say that through this comprehensive approach, President Biden has made historic progress to reduce gun violence. He has taken more executive action to reduce gun violence than any other president at this point of the administration. I could take up the rest of the time talking about these executive actions, but here are just a few examples. The Department of Justice is reining in the proliferation of ghost guns, which you may know are unserialized firearms that law enforcement tell us they are increasingly finding at crime scenes across the country. Justice has launched strike forces to stop the trafficking of firearms across state lines, including through the so-called Iron Pipeline of firearms that flow from the South to the District of Columbia, New Jersey, Philadelphia, and New York. Justice established a zero-tolerance policy for rogue gun dealers who willfully violate the law. The president also called for cities and states to use American Rescue Plan funding to reduce gun crime and other violent crime, including by investing in community violence intervention and prevention, and $10 billion of American Rescue Plan funding has been invested in public safety. The Justice Department published model extreme risk protection order legislation to make it easier for states that want to adopt these red flag laws to do so. And the Department of Defense, Health and Human Services, Homeland Security, Justice, Veterans Affairs, and the Department of Transportation are jointly creating a plan for addressing lethal means safety awareness, education, training, and program evaluation. In addition to the progress via executive action, President Biden also signed into law the most important gun safety legislation in 30 years, the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, and secured the confirmation of Steve Dettelbach to serve as director of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. After that seat went unconfirmed since 2015. We're making progress. That's the good news today. But still, gun violence takes more than 100 American lives a day. Many more Americans suffer the physical and or emotional wounds of gun violence. So this reality leaves me with two questions. First, where do we go from here? And second, is there a reason to be hopeful? When President Biden signed the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act into law, he didn't say that his job was complete. He said we need to seize the momentum of that success to build toward additional action, executive action, and legislation. The president has mapped out the initial path forward through his recently announced Safer America plan, his strategy for reducing gun crime, and it has three key parts. First, funding the police and promoting effective prosecution of crimes affecting families today, including by funding 100,000 additional police officers who will be recruited, trained, hired, and supervised consistent with the standards in the president's executive order to advance effective, accountable community policing. Second, investing in crime prevention and a fairer criminal justice system, including by investing $20 billion in services that address the causes of crime and reduce the burdens on police so they can focus on violent crime, and by incentivizing the reforms of laws that increase incarceration without addressing public safety. And third, taking additional common sense steps on guns to keep dangerous firearms out of dangerous hands, including by calling on Congress to require background checks for all gun sales and ban assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. We've heard a lot of elected officials talk about crime in recent months. If they are really serious about tackling the issue, they should back it up by supporting these common sense measures that will promote gun safety. These are the common sense steps that the president has put forward, and we know that they're supported by the majority of Americans, including gun owners. They respect the Second Amendment, but recognize that it is limited. And the Biden administration is going to work every day to get the Safer America plan done. So that's where we go from here, which leaves my final question. Is there reason to be hopeful? Now, I probably have to say yes to this. As I said, I've worked for President Biden for more than a decade, and he is a self-proclaimed eternal optimist. So I now have that ingrained in me too. But let me spend my final minute or two explaining why I think here hope is meritorious. So I started working on gun violence prevention shortly after the tragedy at Sandy Hook Elementary School on December 14th, 2012. At that time, I served on then Vice President Biden's policy team. So when President Obama tasked then Vice President Biden with developing and implementing the Obama-Biden administration's gun violence response, I was part of the team that helped Vice President Biden develop and execute on dozens of executive actions. I've been thinking a lot about the fact that next month we are going to mark 10 years since the shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School. And this country has experienced 10 years of so much loss and so much pain due to gun violence, but also progress. Not enough, but real progress. 10 years ago, after the defeat of gun legislation mentioned to me in the Senate, it seemed impossible that we'd ever have real gun safety legislation headed to the president's desk. But this year we did it, and President Biden is determined to do it again. Our effort to reduce gun violence is fundamentally different now than it was 10 years ago. I truly believe this. And the reason is because the movement for safety is better organized than ever before. Since Sandy Hook, we've seen the emergence of gun safety organizations that overshadow the influence of the gun lobby. And I truly believe that a linchpin of this work is you, gun owners. We need you, gun owners, to model what it means to be a responsible gun owner, to safely store your weapons and demand that your fellow gun owners do the same, to seek out and encourage the development of smart gun technologies that keep guns from being used by unauthorized users and help reduce suicide. We need you to make clear that the majority of gun owners support the Second Amendment, but recognize that, as I said, it is limited. To make clear that legislation to keep guns out of dangerous hands, and especially dangerous weapons, off our streets are common sense steps. We need you, gun owners, to make clear that the gun lobby is not the same thing as gun owners, because gun owners, just like the rest of Americans, believe that our kids should not have to learn how to run, hide, fight in our schools, in our houses of worship, our movie theaters, and streets. There is a clear path forward to save lives. We just need your help to make it happen. And that is why I am so thrilled to be able to talk to you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Steph. That was wonderful. By the way, were you on, Steph? Did you hear Timmy O from Vera talking about his thing?
I
Isn't that-
did.
Yeah.
I was glad I was able to jump on and hear about that. I think there's a lot of promise in smart gun technologies to save lives.
Yeah, so thank you, and thank you again. People don't know about all the work that you do. Maybe now they know something about it. And we
Thank you so much,
appreciate
Matt.
what you're doing. Thank you for joining us today. Okay, so we're gonna take a second, then we're gonna go to our next panel. We are thrilled with our next panel. So stick around. It's gonna be starting very shortly.